Hello, everybody. Welcome along. My name is Benjamin Bloom. This is the Benjamin Bloom Football Channel. Please leave your bias at the door and join us to have a look at the play-off race in the Championship. Those lovely four places, 3rd, 4th, 5th and 6th, who are going to play off for a place in the Premier League. We've already done videos like this, looking at the relegation picture in the Premier League, who might be joining the Championship from above. We've already looked at the top two pictures, so we're going to have a look at the playoffs right now. There's the current top half of the table. Currently in those playoff spots, Swansea, Brentford, Barnsley, Reading. But plenty more to discuss as it pertains to that possibly changing. Let's look at the outer extremities. Second place, Watford are currently projecting 90.79. The 10-year top two average needed, so that's not the second place projection, that's 1 point above third place. Important distinction, is 85. So we've kind of gone midway between those two numbers, around the 87 mark. We think may be enough this year to get second position. With 6th place, the current projection is Reading at 75.05. Top 6 average needed over the last 10 years. Again, that's not the 6th place number. That's 1 point above 7th. Important distinction. Has been, what did it say? 73. So we think 6th place will be around 74. We think 2nd place will be around 87. Those are our numbers, which help us set our limits when we're discussing this. And like all good betting websites, we're going to set our limits. This video assumes Norwich's 14-point lead over third means they won't get caught. Now, Norwich fans, we know you love talking about Norwich, but I'm afraid you're not really going to be involved in this discussion. You're too far ahead. Please, Watford fans, also don't get emotional when I say means they won't get caught by third place, by two teams. You can discuss Norwich and Watford and whatever could happen above, for first place. I'm not including Norwich in the playoff discussion. I'm also not including Millwall and Stoke. This video assumes that using the current projection, 10-year average, Millwall and Stoke would need 7 wins and 1 draw from the last 8 to reach 74 points. So they are not in the conversation. Would take 7 wins and a draw, we think, based on our, some will accuse me of making arbitrary numbers, but it's basically going to need a massive run from those two and slip-ups from virtually everybody above them. So that gives us our 8 teams, essentially, to have a look at. Let's do it. So, lot of information on that page. The title is Auto Avoid. And the best way to avoid the playoffs is to finish in 2nd place. And it looks like there's 3 teams capable of doing that. We're talking Watford, Swansea and Brentford at the moment. Just my reasoning there. Look at the top in red. Barnsley making 11 points up on Watford in 8 games is, in my opinion, too unlikely. That would involve Watford drawing 2, winning 2 and losing 3 of the last 8. And Barnsley winning 6, drawing 2 and losing none of the last 8. Plus a 22-goal swing. Plus that would obviously include then a lower total for Swansea and Brentford in between. So we're just going with these 3 teams. And it's very complex. Let's do Watford first. Look on the left column there. Those are Watford's opponents. So, Watford have the 6-point advantage, you can see down the bottom there. But they have a difficult run-in because they have to play Norwich, Brentford and Swansea in the last 4 games. Their average opponent is 8.62 in the table. But there's an outlier, Sheffield Wednesday. Their first opponent is 23rd. So if we take their last 7 opponents, the average position, 6.57. Basically, Watford have a hard run-in. If you are the second best team in the division over a season. You will not be scared of opponents who average out at 6.57. But we know what the run-in does, and we know it can be tricky. We know Watford are in good form. There's potential if they can get a good number of points before those last 4 games. Perhaps Norwich, who are currently 14 points clear of third, may already be promoted by 4 games to go. Only needs to go to 1 more point, and that's the 15 for 5 wins. It could be done, couldn't it? So there's Watford. They have a lead. They have a hard run-in. And the other 2 teams have a game in hand. The other 2 teams being Swansea. There they are in the middle. Look at the bottom there. The red one, Sheffield Wednesday at home, is yet to be confirmed. And then, looking at the run-in, it's all right, isn't it? Birmingham 21st, Preston 16th without a manager. Millwall 10th. They can take a draw out of you, though. Wickham bottom. QPR could be on the beach. Reading, tricky. Derby 19th. Might be scrapping for their lives. And then Watford in the last game. So, you have Watford with a 6-point lead, in form, with a difficult run-in, having played a game more. You have Swansea with a 6-point deficit, not necessarily in form, with an easier running, with a game in hand, and of course that last day of the season. You're keeping up. There's Brentford on the right there. Their average opponent is not as hard as either team, not as hard as Watford's, but Swansea have got it easier. Sorry, falling all over my numbers here. If you do look, though, at the next 4 games for Brentford, Huddersfield, Birmingham, Preston, Millwall, it kind of gets gradually harder as they go up the table there with Cardiff and Bournemouth. But they could pick up points in the next 4 games. So too could Swansea, though. So it really, really is setting up for kind of everyone to still be in and around it with the 4 games to go. That would still mean Watford having a lead going into the last 4 games. Very, very interesting. So, those are your 3 teams for second. Watford, hardest running, fewest games. Swansea and Brentford, easier run-ins, more games. But there is a 6-point gap. Going to get very, very interesting. So, we would think 2 of those teams are definitely going to finish in the playoffs. Then we got to look at 5th to 7th, which is currently Barnsley, Reading and Bournemouth. And I've got to kind of include Bournemouth in this because, frankly, if they were to win their game in hand, Reading wouldn't even be in the playoff positions. I know that's a bit of a leap, but it's true. If you were to add on 3 points and say a 1-0 win, the goal difference is nicely in Bournemouth's favour. So we do have to take into account that possibility and pop Bournemouth into this conversation. Let's look first at Barnsley. Have a look at the top there. Reminder, current 6th is Reading, projecting 75. And that average has been 73 to get into the playoffs. So, from these totals, you're looking at, for 75, Barnsley, 11 points from 8. Reading, 13 points from 8. And Bournemouth, 16 points from 9 gives you the 75s, which we think may well be enough this year. Might not, who knows. There are your Barnsley games down the left-hand side as you look. And the first thing to look at is the golden game there. Literally, the first game when we get back is 5th against 6th. Barnsley play Reading the first game back. You couldn't have written it any better. And what that means is there are lots of scenarios that work against a team that doesn't win that game. So if there's a draw, the teams below are going to be, right, here we go, they've both dropped. Can we win? If there's a winner, obviously the loser of that game, then a 3-point gap goes in between those 2 over that game. And of course the chasers come in. Big game straight away. The rest of it for Barnsley is not too bad until the last day. Luton, Borough obviously 9th. And then bottom half, look, Coventry, Huddersfield, Rotherham, Preston. And there is an argument that Norwich, on the last day, if they can't get the 100 points and they're in first and they're promoted, might be easier than playing, I don't know, somebody who's down at the bottom scrapping for their lives. Who knows going to that last game? But it's okay for Barnsley. For Reading, of course, they have the same thing here. They play Barnsley first off, and then it gets harder. So they've got Derby, and then it's Watford and Cardiff, Luton, and then Swansea. Average opponent 8.63. Only Watford, if we judge it by the league table, have a harder run-in than Reading. So this is big for Reading, particularly the next 4 or 5 games. They've got to play Barnsley, Watford, and Swansea. So that's more than 4 or 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then Norwich. Okay, if I'm applying the logic that I just did to Barnsley, I just feel the last day of the season is always different. You can always put the last day, even though it's the second last or what have you for Reading, the last day of the season just feels different, doesn't it? D-Mob happy. So, Reading are in 6th. They've got Barnsley in that first game, but they've got a hard run with Watford, Swansea and Norwich still to play. Bournemouth have a game in hand on both of those two teams, and they have easier opponents than Reading, but not Barnsley. Because look in there for Bournemouth, a big game against Borough straight away. They can almost put Borough out of the race with that first game if they can go and get the victory. Woodgate against his old club. And then, look, 15th, 20th, 18th, and then tricky there. Look, Norwich, Millwall and Brentford in a row. That's crunch time, isn't it? Absolute crunch time. Millwall are good for a draw, aren't they? Norwich away, ouch. Brentford at home. And then the last 2, if they're in it, Wycombe, bottom, probably relegated by then. Like almost certain to be relegated, actually, with 2 games to go. They're way off that at the moment. And the very last game, Stoke, we expect to be well on the beach by then. But hey, hell hath no fury like an opponent with nothing to play for. Sometimes they can be a nightmare as well. Basically, between those 3, Barnsley have the advantage with points, and they can't be caught with the game in hand, and they have the best opponents. Reading have a small advantage with points that can be taken out with the game in hand for Bournemouth, and they have disproportionately harder opponents than Bournemouth do. Just a couple of really key games on that first week, and we will know more if, in that first game back, Barnsley beat Reading and Bournemouth beat Borough. Easy for me to say. This feels like it's swinging in Bournemouth and Barnsley's favour, doesn't it? And against Reading. Let's look at the 2 outsiders, and we're talking Cardiff and Borough. We've just considered Stoke and Millwall too low. 2 wily managers in there, Warnock and McCarthy. McCarthy can be a bit more risk averse than Warnock. Warnock will throw the kitchen sink at games in a way that McCarthy did, always protecting that point minimum. They're on the outskirts of it with 56 and 58 points. I'll remind you again, we're looking at 74, 75 points this season. So for Cardiff to get 74, with 8 remaining, you're looking at 5 wins, a draw and 2 defeats. Borough, trickier, 2 points back. You're looking at 6 wins and 2 defeats in there, or 5 wins and 3 draws, going undefeated for the rest of the season. All about those 3-pointers though, isn't it? But look at the run-ins here. Cardiff, on paper, have the easiest run-in out of any team by average position. Yes, they've got 2 away games against top 6 teams, Reading and Brentford. However, their away form is second only, I believe, in terms of games won to Norwich at the top of the league. They're good away, and then look at the other games. They literally have 21st, 22nd, 23rd and 24th to play, along with 17th and 15th. the entire bottom 4 play Cardiff in the running. If there's a slip ahead of them, they've got the games. Can they get draws against Reading and Brentford maybe? And can they go 9 points from the last 3 games and see where they are? Interesting. Borough have got it quite easy as well. And what Borough do know is that in the next 3 games, they're going to know what's what. Because they've got direct rivals. They've got Bournemouth and Barnsley. Watford a bit further ahead. They can't so much damage Watford in terms of their run against them. They can the other 2. And when you're really on the chase and there's a bit of a distance in between, you'd almost prefer to play your direct rivals because not only are you controlling your destiny, you're controlling their destiny in that game. You're guaranteeing that. We've seen it before. Someone goes and does a heroic 4-3 win away from home and their opponents just cruise in 3-0 at home to 18th position or what have you. If you're playing against them, you can guarantee that swing. So that's either a very good thing or a very bad thing for Borough because they're either going to be in it in 3 games or they're going to be done, especially if they lose to Bournemouth and or Barnsley and basically don't beat them. If Borough can get through those 3 games with 5 points undefeated, 6 would be fantastic. I'm sure they'd take wins against Bournemouth and Barnsley and a defeat to Watford. And then, look, 12th, 22nd, 23rd, 13th and 24th. So, across the last 4 games, Borough play the entire current, they may not be then, current bottom 3. Very, very interesting. Let's bring it all up on one slide. So, there are your 8 potential playoff teams in my using my limits, not including Norwich in first and not including Stoke and Millwall. And it's fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating. There's Watford at the top. Toughest running, 6-point lead, and they're in form. But they've got the toughest running. Swansea then behind them have got the second easiest running based on average opponent, and they've got a game in hand. They're not particularly in form, and we're worried about goal scoring as well, though. But the fixtures look all right. Brentford have a medium run-in. They've got players returning, and they've got the game in hand. So you can always make arguments for this all just squeezing together, can't you? Barnsley have a medium run-in and momentum, and they will probably be banking on the fact that those teams just below them are going to duke it out against each other and they can slip in there, you would think. Reading, you'd be concerned if you're a Reading fan. Obviously, if you're going to get up and win the playoffs, you've got to beat tricky teams, but they've got the second toughest run-in. Only Watford have got a harder run-in than Reading, and of course, it could literally swing on the first game against Barnsley. They could be beaten by Barnsley and that could put them on the back foot for the entire race. That game feels really, really important, doesn't it? Bournemouth, then third toughest run-in and a game in hand. And we just mustn't forget with Bournemouth the quality. Like Watford and Norwich, year 1 parachute team, lots of Premier League, ex-Premier League players in there. And competence with those squads and in the financial departments of those clubs, and they should frankly be in the playoffs. So can Woodgate get competence on the pitch and Bournemouth get in there? Then your outsiders, 4-point deficit for Cardiff to make up, easiest running. Interesting. Borough a bit further back, third easiest running, and they've got those direct opponents first. So really, really interesting. We're not looking at this and saying, oh, here's Watford with the lead and they've got the easiest running. It's almost like you've got the teams defending positions, i.e. Watford in second and Reading in sixth, are the 2 teams with the hardest run-ins. And then you've got teams below them who have got much easier run-ins on paper than the teams 1 place above, which makes it feel very, very interesting. Of course, there are many, many ways this could play out. Everyone could just hold, in which case Watford go into that hard run with a 6-point lead, a 4-point lead, and taken into the account the game in hand, maybe a 3 or 4 point lead, and Watford make it over the line. You don't know. You could get the swing, couldn't you? You could get Watford go late. They hold and then they drop off in the last 4 games. Remember, that still requires one of the other teams to come through and win. You could get some craziness going down into 6th place, whereby you've got both Borough and Cardiff, if they can stay in it, literally playing the bottom 3 and bottom 4 over the last few weeks. Can they get 9 or 10 points from the last 3 or 4 games? Wow. Now, when we do these prediction videos, I'm damned if I do and I'm damned if I don't. I can give you all the scenarios, all the information, and then people tell me off for sitting on the fence and not making a prediction. And then when I make a prediction, people invariably, if it doesn't involve the team that they support winning, they get a little bit emotional with me. So I'm going to give you my hunch, and I'm going to say this with the caveat that everything could literally be turned on its head in the first week. What if Reading beat Barnsley and Borough beat Bournemouth in the first game back? Everything changes there and then. So this is my hunch right now as we speak. It's a hunch, not a prediction. Okay, so don't get emotional. And rather than having a pop at my prediction, why don't you put your own in the comments? That way I can at least feels a little bit fairer, doesn't it? That way around. Here's my hunch. Don't tell me or ask me what order. At the moment, I'm thinking Swansea, Brentford, Barnsley and Bournemouth are going to be in the playoff positions. So, apologies Reading fans, I'm just looking at the hard run and that big first game against Barnsley, which is away from home of course, and just thinking there's a possibility of a change of position. And that's the only one I'm seeing happen. I think Watford can put enough points on the table before that hard run that will mean they just need to either beat one of Swansea or Brentford or not lose, because draws kill you in the running. But if you've got a lead and you're playing a direct rival, a draw is absolutely fine. That's my hunch at the moment. Swansea and Brentford, 2nd consecutive season. Barnsley, incredible, from nearly being relegated last year in the playoffs. I think, hey, their momentum could knows that. Who knows? Who knows? Like I say, it's a hunch. And I think Bournemouth may well get ahead of Reading. Let me know what you think in the comments. That's all the numbers. A little bit of a hunch. I dare say we could make exactly the same video again with 4 games to go and predict entirely different things. Remember, with these type prediction look ahead videos, we are essentially talking about predicting the future. So let's be grown up about it, and everyone's entitled to their view. And after the fact, we can talk about it. But get in the conversation, make your own prediction. Don't be that wallflower that sits on the side of the dance floor at a wedding, really wanting to dance themselves, mocking the people who are dancing. Get on the dance floor, get dancing, and make your predictions for who is going to end up in those championship playoffs. Beautifully set up as ever, and I'm sure many a twist and turn remains. Get involved, get your predictions, and it's a big over and out from me. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button to see more videos from this channel. Hit the subscribe button, and to be notified every time we upload, ring the bell for those notifications to come through on your device. If you really want to support the channel and me as a content creator, I will be eternally grateful if you head over to the merch store and grab something, or support over on Patreon, patreon.com/Benjamin Bloom. Thank you for your time. Go and watch another video.